these worms have been in this box. Wriggly Wrigglers. I've purchased, I think, 800 grams of worms. So we need to act quickly now and get our buckets built and get those little wormies in their new home.
We have Savannah and we have Ginger and we have, Jonathan. We can't forget Harry and Jack.
I don't know how many worms we've got to name.
Hello. Oh, you smell like poopa.
Do they?
No.
Oh.
We've got to do the buckets.
We do. We've got to crack on.
Get them in their new house.
The postman was very pleased when I told him they were worms.
What? See, high frequency sound, my hearing aids. I hear squeaking. There's babies in here.
Oh, let's get them out.
Okay.
So while Tricia's doing those buckets, I've been soaking one of the coconut Coir, whichever way you like to pronounce it, blocks, just in some water to get it to this sort of stage. If I show you, as I've read, squeezing it hard and you'll get a few drops and that's it, but that's squeezing hard. So it's moist but not saturated, and I think we're going to put all this in one bucket to roughly about a third. So one of the buckets is a third, and I'm going to mix it in with some of the shredded paper, a little bit of seeding compost because that's got some grit in it, and go from there. The next part is adding shredded paper to their bedding. And as I've read, this also is a food source for the worms, so it's not literally they just sleep in this and eat the food that you put in. This is actually what they digest as well. I have got a few dried eggshells that I've ground up, not as many as I'd like, but it'll do for now. Just give it a mix in. I'm going to put in a few coffee grounds, a little bit of seed compost. I don't particularly like for growing my seedlings in, so rather than it go to waste, it can go in the worm bin. Again, we don't want it to be too saturated or too dry. So I'll just give this a good mix. Right, and this is just some newspaper I've cut out into the shape of the bins. I've soaked it so it's going to be moist, and this will be a disc of almost like a duvet for them. It'll go over the top once everything's in, once the worms are in and covered up. This will then go on the top just to help keep the moisture levels in, but also it acts as like a little roof for the worms. They like the dark, so they will tend not to come round the edge and try and escape up the sides of the buckets. Hope they like courgettes. Right, back to the mixture. Mixing that round, let me show you what else. Literally, I've got a tiny few dried eggshells that I've ground up. I'm just going to sprinkle them into the bucket. And the next is the coffee grounds. So now we have the coffee grounds, the eggshells, the core, the shredded paper. Look at that, if I do that I get 2 or 3 drops, but it's a tight squeeze and that's perfect. Tricia's just got to finish rubbing down where she's drilled the holes just to make the sharp edges disappear. We don't want to be giving the worms any hurdles. So that's looking good. Bit of soil and then we're done. So this is the final produce. Great bedding for the worms, just the right moisture level in that. couple of drops at a tight squeeze. Can't wait to get them in there. I've now just got to wait for Tricia to sandpaper down the holes in the buckets, and we'll get onto the worms. Right, composting worms. And we ordered these through wigglywigglers.co.uk. Haven't read the booklet yet, and we have got 500 grams of composting worms. And they come in a little
so exciting
bag that I am going to need to cut open with some scissors.
I just seen George sticking his head out. Don't cut George's head off.
I hope they're in another bag in some soil somewhere so I don't end up cutting any. This is a first for us. Neither of us have done a worm bin before, so I'm not quite sure how I'm going to feel when I see them all wiggling.
Ah, there they are.
Can you see them all?
Hi guys.
So they're a mixture of worms. I'll put on the screen what actually the mixture is. They're not just red wrigglers. There's another variety as well, which are specifically for composting. So let's transfer them. They look pretty active.
You don't want to pick them out of their hands, right? A little bit
No,
at a
I
time?
don't.
Aw,
Sorry.
that's too bad. They're pets.
I'm going to lower them into the compost bedding.
I can hear them. What's going on? What are you doing?
And we are not going to feed these for a week. We're going to let them settle. Just make sure there's no worms left in the bag.
There's some big ones in there.
And I think I'm not going to disturb them too much. They've obviously been stressed because we got them via Royal Mail. So they've been in the post, and I'm just going to allow them to settle because some of them are in a big ball. There's a great big ball of worms there.
Aren't you supposed to separate them out of their big balls?
No, they'll find their
they'll find
own
their own
way.
way.
Now this is just that wet piece of newspaper. It's about 6-7 sheets thick, and it's going to be like a blanket. You can buy them, but I'm doing it as cheap as possible. And there's a small gap around the edge, and hopefully the worms won't come beyond that because they like the dark. And we're just going to see how they go, because hopefully they won't start crawling up the sides of these tanks here and out through the holes, because we've not put the mesh on these. We're going to see how we go without doing that. Right, let's have a morning look. Oh wow, look, they are trying to escape. Maybe because they're new and in a new bin.
See, that one got out.
But there's a reason why they're trying to get out, so we'll work that out.
That's George. Hi, George.
Just one George.
Oh, these ones are really out here, aren't they?
George the first, George the second.
Okay.
And they are going around the rim of the lid here.
Yep, right here.
In the little grooves. So Tricia's the brave one. She can get them out with her hands. I need to put gloves on.
One in there, aren't you? Come on. Get out there. Get that. There we go. Come on. Come on. That's it. Come on. There we go. Get that in there.
Wow. Happy Saturday morning. A very eventful morning with the worms. Tricia got up early, came to check them because we'd moved them into the boiler room now. And there was quite a few that had escaped, and sadly we've lost a handful because of the cold temperatures in the night. I think obviously once they were out of the comfort of the compost, the cold got to them. So we've changed a few things, trying to work out why they wanted to escape the bin in the first place. And one of the main things we think is oxygen. That's why we moved them actually out of the dryer room, the utility room out there, because the washing machine and tumble dryer are in there. What tends to happen is the vibrations from the machine disturb them. So we moved them in here. So we've cleared that up, and we've put, if I can show you from here, a few more holes in the lid, and they seem to be staying put. That's a damp piece of newspaper on top that's moist, keeps the moisture in, keeps the darkness around there. And they're all looking a lot more happier in there, because before they were literally around trying to escape. Much happier. So we think, just for the size of the bucket and the amount of bedding we'd put in there, we just needed a few more holes on the lid. Right, we've had to do a few little adjustments to the lid, putting more air holes, as you can see, in the lid. This is to make sure they're getting enough oxygen, and we think some light going through to prevent them from crawling out. So Tricia's just putting some mesh screening over the holes and sticking it down with some silicone. And once that's dry, that will go back on the bin, and we'll keep our worms contained within. Right, the boiler's just kicked in, so excuse a little bit of noise. But these are the adaptations we did to the worm bin yesterday. Little bits of mesh over more air holes. We think that was the problem with them escaping the first night, as well as being new. They don't like... Well, it takes them a little while to get acclimatised, accustomised to their new surroundings. So I did feed them this morning a couple of avocado shells. But they seem a lot happier. They're not escaping, they've got enough oxygen, they've got enough food, they've got good bedding that's nice and damp but not saturated. So we're doing all right with them. Now we have to just leave them to get on with it, but I don't know if you can see, I can already, that there are castings on the top there. And now we've just got to leave them alone. I think they're probably getting annoyed at us because we're a bit attentive to their needs at the minute. So there we go, they've been put to bed. I'm sure Tricia will check on them before the night's out. A few little issues with the worm bin. As you can see, we have got the lid on there loosely. What I have just done is added our third bin. This top bin, I've put some fresh bedding in, which is shredded paper, some more of the Coir, and a little bit of food. And hopefully the worms in the middle bin now will transfer through the holes in the bottom of this bin into this bin if they find that this environment's better for them for some reason. And we keep saying they're escaping downwards, obviously into the bottom bin, which is the worm tea reservoir. There's no holes in the bottom of this bin. We've just got an upturned pan in there just to raise it. Otherwise these get stuck together and are hard to pull apart. So with that in there, we're finding a lot in this bottom bin. So for some reason they're escaping this bin. We don't know what it is. It's not too wet, it's not too dry. All we're thinking is this again is oxygen. And the only way we can keep them from crawling out is to remove this lid and have the light on. And that makes sure that they bed down well in there. But we'll see how they go with the transfer and if they prefer this environment. I did put some Durston's seedling compost in that one. So I don't know, maybe it's that they don't like. So we'll see. We'll leave that for a few days. I'm going to keep the lid off for now. And we're going to keep coming back and checking on that, just to see if they stay put. And the temperature in this room at the minute is 16.2 Celsius. We know the worms are good down to about a 13 there. We've written that on here. It's a good temperature for the worms. So we're going to keep an eye on them and the temperature and see how we go.